Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again, back with more entitled people stories. In today's video, my entitled neighbor Karen bulldozed my classic car and destroyed my property. Here is what happened, let's dive right in. The loss of my father when he was just 50 was devastating news. We had always been extremely close. I knew it would not be easy to accept the fact that I would never get to have one more conversation with or get to listen to another one of his perfectly timed horrible jokes. The only thing that made the situation slightly bearable was the fact that I got to move back into my childhood home. It's a relatively big house with an enormous front yard. It was a property that had been passed down for generations in my family. We had made so many memories in that house, and living amongst them meant I did not have to miss my dad as much as I would if I were to live anywhere else. They were exactly the kind of memories I wanted to leave my daughter with, so I decided to hold on to the house no matter what happens. I had moved back into the house after 2 decades and everything was still the same, down to most of the neighbors. The only one that was relatively new was the lady who had moved in right next door. She was the type of person most people would consider a Karen. Karen had moved in around 12 years back and had been buying as many houses in the neighborhood as possible. She would then rent them out and act as though she owned the entire street and everyone who resided in it. That was why her now 25-year-old son grew up to be extremely spoiled and entitled. I never expected my life to take a turn like this. I always thought I would live in this house until the day I died, but even my firm beliefs started to waver when I met my crazy neighbor. Since then, my life had been turned upside down. Karen had taken a keen interest in my property, specifically my house. She'd always come over to chat and make small talk, but I knew what she really wanted. Her entitled son had his heart set on my house and she was determined to make it happen. According to her, there was not a single thing that her beloved son could not have. Karen had already made quite a name for herself in the entire neighborhood. She was known for being a difficult and stubborn person who always got what she wanted, no matter who she had to step on to get it. I had heard stories from my neighbors about how Karen had tried to block the construction of a new community center because she did not want it in her backyard. She had gone so far as to hire lawyers and start petitions to try and stop the construction. She claimed that it ruined the aesthetic of her house. It was obvious that she just saw the land that went to the community center as wasted business potential. And then there was the time that she had a huge tree on her property cut down despite protests from her neighbors. The tree had been a landmark in the neighborhood for years, providing shade and a sense of history. But Karen did not care about that. She only cared about what she wanted. Karen had always been a vocal and pushy neighbor, and many of the other residents in the area had stories of her trying to control their lives in one way or another. She was particularly notorious for trying to dictate what other people could and could not do with their own property. One family in the neighborhood had put up a fence around their backyard to keep their dogs from running loose, and Karen had immediately taken offense to it. She complained loudly to anyone who would listen, saying that the fence was an eyesore and that it violated the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. She even went so far as to file a formal complaint with the local homeowner association. Another time, a young couple had moved into the house next door to Karen. They had decided to paint the exterior of their house a bright shade of yellow, which Karen found offensive. She started calling them up in the middle of the night, yelling about how the color was destroying the neighborhood's charm. Eventually, the couple caved and repainted their house a more muted color just to get Karen to leave them alone. But perhaps the most egregious example of Karen's entitlement and bad behavior came when she tried to prevent a local family from building a wheelchair ramp for their disabled son. The family had received a grant to pay for the ramp, but Karen claimed that it would ruin the look of the neighborhood and tried to get the grant revoked. When that failed, she went door to door trying to rally the other residents against the family and their ramp. It was not until the local news picked up the story and shamed Karen that she finally backed down. Her son took after her in more ways than one. He would practically bully the people who rented his mother's houses. Every time they happened to be slightly late on the payment of the rent, he would treat them much worse. He did not care if they had genuine setbacks that prevented them from paying on time. Most of these stories sounded too bizarre to be true, but only when it began happening to me I realized how terrifying she could actually be. At first, her attempts at getting me to sell the house seemed civil. I politely declined her offers, explaining that my family had owned this property for generations and I could not imagine living anywhere else. But Karen was persistent. She would show up at my doorstep unannounced, offering to buy my house at a price that was too good to be true. I knew something was off about her offer, so I declined again. That is when things started to get crazy. One day I woke up to find the right doors of my beloved 1969 Pontiac GTO keyed up pretty badly. The car had been in my family for generations, just like the house, and it was one of my most prized possessions. I immediately suspected Karen. I mean, who else would do something like this? I went next door to confront her, but she denied everything. She told me that it was probably just some kids who had done it for fun, but I knew better. I knew that she had destroyed my car to try and scare me into selling her my property, and I was furious. I could not believe that someone would stoop so low just to get what they wanted. This classic car was the one that my late father had used to teach me how to drive. It was the reason I had my driver's license and the reason why I met my wife. Even my wife was furious about the car. She is generally an extremely patient person, but this car was almost part of our family now, and that's when I decided to fight back. I took Karen to court, suing her for the damages caused to my car. The trial was long and stressful, but I was determined to get justice for what had happened. As the trial dragged on, I could not help but feel the weight of the situation on my shoulders. I had been so confident at first, sure that justice would be served. But as time went on, I began to doubt myself. Karen's lawyer was ruthless, poking holes in my argument and trying to discredit my witnesses. I felt like I was in a battle I could not win, but I refused to give up. I knew that my family's legacy was worth fighting for, and so I stood my ground, refusing to back down even when things looked their bleakest. After everything, justice was finally served. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering Karen to pay for the damages to my car. I was elated, feeling a sense of vindication that I had never experienced before, but my victory was short-lived. Karen was furious that she had lost the case and that her plans to get my house had failed. She continued to harass me, making threats and trying to intimidate me into selling her my property. At first I tried to ignore her, telling myself that she was just blowing off steam, but as time went on her behavior became more and more erratic. She would show up at my doorstep at all hours of the night, screaming and yelling about how I had ruined her son's future. She would leave notes on my car threatening to destroy it again if I did not sell her my property. I was terrified. I'd never dealt with someone like this before and I did not know what to do. I started to feel like my life was in danger, and that's when I decided to take action. I went to the police, explaining the situation and showing them the notes that Karen had left, and the police were sympathetic, but there was not much they could do. Karen had not technically broken any laws, and without solid evidence, they could not arrest her. However, they did offer to increase patrols in the area, hoping that the increased police presence would deter Karen from causing any further trouble. This certainly gave me a sense of comfort. For a few weeks, things seemed to calm down. Karen did not show up at my doorstep and there were no more threatening notes. I started to think that maybe she had finally given up. After what felt like weeks, I was finally able to sleep in peace. But then one night I heard the sound of a bulldozer outside. I looked out the window and my heart sank. There was Karen driving the bulldozer towards my house. I rushed outside yelling at her to stop, but she just laughed manically and kept coming closer. I could feel the ground shaking beneath my feet as the bulldozer got closer and closer. In that moment I knew that I had to act fast. I called the police and then tried to block Karen's path with my car, but it was no use. The bulldozer plowed right through my car, crushing it beneath its weight, and I was devastated. Not only had Karen destroyed my car, but now she was threatening to destroy my house too. She managed to already damage a part of my garage where I had some other prized possessions of mine. However, the police arrived just in time before she could complete her evil plan and ruin everything I loved. She was arrested and charged with the destruction of my property and harassment. I was relieved that she was finally going to face the consequences of her actions. But at the same time, I was left with the aftermath of her destruction. My car was completely destroyed and my house suffered some damage from the bulldozer. It was going to take a lot of time and money to repair everything, but I was not gonna let Karen win. I was going to fight back once again, and this time I was going to make sure that she paid for everything she had done. I took her to court again, and this time for the damages caused to my car and property. The trial was long and grueling, but I was determined to finally get justice. I knew my father would have wanted me to stand up for our legacy. When Karen destroyed my beloved 1969 Pontiac GTO with a bulldozer, I was initially emotionally shattered, but what was even worse was the fact that she did it in an attempt to bully me into selling my family's property, which had been in my family for generations. I knew I could not let her get away with it, but I also knew I could not fight her alone. Thankfully, I had the support of my neighbors. They had all witnessed Karen's erratic behavior over the years, and they were just as fed up with her entitlement as I was. As soon as the news of the bulldozer incident got out, people started coming up to me to offer their support and help. Some of the neighbors organized a petition demanding that Karen be held accountable for what she had done, and they went door to door gathering signatures and spreading the word about what had just happened. Others offered to testify in court or write letters to the judge expressing their outrage over Karen's behavior. One neighbor, a lawyer, offered to take on my case pro bono. He had dealt with Karen before and he knew just how difficult she could be, but he was determined to help me get justice. Together, we filed a lawsuit against Karen seeking damages for the destruction of my car and the emotional distress she had caused me. Karen, of course, fought back. She hired a team of expensive lawyers and tried to use her wealth and influence to intimidate us. She claimed that I had provoked her into destroying my car and that I had no right to the property in the first place, but we were prepared for her tactics. We had evidence and witnesses on our side, and we were determined to see this through to the end. It took months of legal wrangling, but eventually we prevailed. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering Karen to pay for the damages she had caused to my car and property, and also fining her for her reckless behavior. She was forced to sell some of her own property to cover the costs, which was a blow to her pride and pocketbook. Everyone who had encountered Karen in the past was glad that she was going to be put behind bars, but perhaps the biggest victory was the message that was sent to Karen and others like her. The neighborhood had stood up to her entitlement and her bullying, and they had won. People began to feel empowered to stand up for their own rights and push back against Karen's attempts to control their lives. So there, over time, Karen's influence in the neighborhood began to wane. Her son still lived there, but people no longer feared him or let him dictate their lives. Instead, they came together to make their own community a better place, one that was built on respect and mutual support. It was not easy, but I finally had my revenge. And in the end, justice was served. Karen was ordered to pay for all of the damages, including the cost of a new car and repairs to my property. Karen had underestimated me, thinking that she could bully me into selling her my property, but I had stood my ground, fighting back against her every step of the way. So finally, in the end, I won. My family's legacy was safe, and Karen had learned that you cannot always get what you want, no matter how entitled you may feel. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much in advance. And also I hope for everyone watching this video that they may never have a neighbor like this Karen in the story. To be honest, I would not wish this on my worst enemy. And the next one is titled Crazy Coworker from Hell. Posted by user WonkyDoodlePoodle on our own subreddit r/ripe stories. So I had just started a new job and I was in a training class with this woman. I was 30 but had been in school for ages, so I was a bit naive, and this woman was not much older than me but had 3 or 4 kids. Sorry, my memory is going. I started a friendship with her and we were hanging out on breaks. She is telling me all these crazy stories about her time as an army wife, her youth in Utah, and being removed from her parents, foster care, all this stuff, etc. Now, I don't think much of this because I had a rough childhood too, and went to school with some sisters that had it even worse, so nothing she said really tripped my senses. My dad had crazy stories from his youth as well, and though he exaggerates a bit, they are still true. So all this stuff keeps happening to her. Her husband kicks her out, lets her back in, she gets involved in a cult and is trying to break away. This guy from the cult is stalking her, she has seizures at work and has to leave in an ambulance a couple of times. And it turns out that she is involved in this court case because this serial assaulter was caught and she is testifying against him because she was a victim too. Finally, she has one more seizure at work and she is eyeballing me like a kid looking to see if mommy is watching his tantrum while everyone gawks, and I just say to myself, she is faking it. She is completely faking it. I was a long-time babysitter and she looks like a kid faking a serious emotional outburst to a parent trying to get off easy for something. Then one day I go to her house and another friend is helping her clean it and I find out he is her ex. The guy does not even say any more than that. She told us that he was going to throw her out because she was slacking as the wife and not doing the chores. Then a few weeks later, she is on leave for falling down the stairs. At this point, I'm feeling things are completely sus. It's just too many crazy stories. I've been having anxiety attacks worrying about her and her kid's safety, so I get this wild hair to look her up on the internet. This is 2000, a few people have AOL, but not many people are familiar with the internet. Now, the internet was really different back then, most of it was academic info being shared. All of the major universities shared papers online and many of the science journals and some news outlets, especially the Salt Lake Tribune. I do a search on her because after all the crazy stuff she said, maybe there's something on her. And jackpot. She lied about being assaulted and got this guy put in jail. He had just been freed a year or so prior and they had a big article. Had to pay a fee to get the whole thing, but yeah, she is a pathological liar and has spent her entire adulthood lying about everything. So I print out the article and give it to the other coworker and she is blown away and pissed beyond belief. Honest coworker gives HR a copy of the article because liar said that she injured her shoulder falling down the stairs, the same injury she claims she received in both assault cases in the past. The fallout my employer gives the liar a settlement of a small amount of money, I heard less than 5,000 if she will quit, drop her case against them for the shoulder injury and never be heard from again. My other coworker found out that she had injured her shoulder as a kid and it was a lifetime injury. Her husband had divorced her because she was a liar and she had an affair and had an affair baby while they were married. He got custody of that kid during the divorce. She asked to move in with him and the kids doing the housework in return for rent. She was not ever holding up her end of the bargain. He did not really want to do it, but he wanted the kids to be able to see her because they missed her. He never told us anything because he figured we would not believe him after all the lies she had said. It turns out the cult people were just a nice small church group and she had lied to them that all of us were using and abusing her and they were trying to rescue her from us while we thought we were trying to rescue her from them. I ended up telling her I never wanted to see her again and I never heard another thing about her ever again. Now, her name is too common and I haven't had any luck finding any more internet dirt on her. So yeah, that was the craziest coworker I've ever had. I'll have a crazy roommate story for you when I feel up to typing that out. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have any crazy coworker stories, then please feel free to share it on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, which is our own subreddit where you can easily post long stories, and if they are good, I will read them in a video if you wish. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. After a long week, I decided to take my husband out to a restaurant. We both had a very stressful week at work, so I decided that we deserved a nice dinner out. The restaurant we went to was 30 minutes away from our home. It served the best Italian food in town, which is my husband's favorite. We got there and parked, and as we were getting ready to leave, I saw a woman coming towards us. The woman knocked on my window angrily, so I decided not to open the door yet. She kept aggressively knocking at the window, and then she started spitting on the car. I looked at my husband and said, "I can handle this." I opened the door and got out of the car. "Yes, ma'am, what happened?" I asked. "Why are you spitting on my car?" "What happened is that I need this parking spot," she replied, pointing at our car. "I'm deeply sorry, but we already took this one. There are multiple empty spots in the parking lot." "No, I need this one. I'm overweight and I deserve the handicap spot because I cannot walk too much." "I'm disabled, so I cannot walk too much either. We also have the handicap placard in the car," I replied, already angry. "Can I see the placard in your car?" "No, that's none of your business. Just move your car. Look, there is an empty spot," she replied, pointing at another parking spot. My husband got out of the car and started screaming at the woman. She got a little scared as she started to back off towards her car. "Lady, I saw the BMW you got out of, and if you think you're entitled because of that, you're wrong. We are not moving the car. Also, you can thank me for not punching you in the face," my husband said. "You are fake disabled and I know it. I'm not dumb," she screamed, looking at me. She then went to her car, so I took the opportunity to end the conversation and we finally went inside. From inside, I can hear the woman screaming. I saw her in the window circling our car, so we went out again. "Why are you screaming? Why can't you understand I won't move the car?" I told her. "I cannot make more than 10 steps. I'm overweight," she screamed. "Are you sick? Do you have any disease that makes you fat?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "I'm asking you if you have a disease or if you're just a lazy fat woman, so please answer." She started screaming and pushing me, so I started screaming back at her. She pushed me continuously and started screaming as loud as she could. My husband pushed her off me and stayed beside me as she came close again. The restaurant owner came out, came to us and asked what happened. I explained everything to him, and so did the woman, each of us with a different story. "I understand, ma'am. Please find another parking spot," replied the owner. "This woman's car is already parked here, and I also see the handicap placard in their car." Happily and victorious, I went back inside and finally ordered food. After about 10 minutes, I see the woman finally entering the restaurant. "I see that she found a parking spot after all," said my husband, laughing. As we were talking about the woman, I saw her going towards the bathroom, so I took my eyes off her. My husband and I continued our dinner like nothing happened, forgetting about the event. After I finished eating, I got up to go to the bathroom when we heard a car alarm. I saw the restaurant owner running outside to see what happened. He came back and after a few seconds he looked at me and said, "It's your car, ma'am. It's that lady from before." I ran outside and the woman stands next to my car with a rock in her hand and the handicap placard in her other hand. My window is broken and glass is all over the ground. "What's wrong with you?" I screamed. "I figure that I should take the sign from your car. I know you're faking the disability, so I want to stop you two from scamming other people too," she replied, showing me the sign in her hand. "You broke my car and stole from it. Do you realize what you are doing?" As I started walking towards her, she started running to her car. I took big steps following her. My husband was right behind me and he was as angry as it gets. "Didn't you say you could barely walk? Now you're running!" I screamed. "You said you could walk 10 steps." She got in her car and locked the doors. She placed a handicap placard on her windshield and laughed. I looked at her as she left the parking lot and I then turned around to the owner. "Please tell me that you have security cameras around here." "Of course, ma'am. Come with me." The restaurant owner gave me a recording of the whole incident from beginning to end and we went straight to the police. I showed them the recording and explained everything once again. It did not take much and they found her home address, so we all went there. She had a big white house with a big property around it. In her yard there was the BMW that we saw before and another one. She was really rich. The police knocked on the door and she opened it. "What's the problem, officer?" "You broke this woman's window and stole from her car," said the policeman pointing at me. "No, I didn't. She's lying. She's a scammer," she screamed. "We have a video of it," he replied. "Well, right before the video started she came and stole the handicap placard from my car. I just wanted to get it back." She walks to the car and shows the policeman the placard in the car, repeating that it was hers from the start. "It doesn't work like that, ma'am. The video was always on. We can see you from the moment you got there till the moment you left." The police officer puts handcuffs on her as she was screaming and trying to kick him. "You are arrested for aggression, for breaking into their car, stealing from it and running from the restaurant." She screamed at me and the police officer and she started calling me a fake disabled person and my husband a dumb scammer. The policeman took the woman to the station and we were finally free of her. In less than a week we received money to repair our car as she was forced by the law to do so. We got a new placard and I wrote my name on the back of it. "Next time something like this happens, I can show them my name written here," I said, laughing. I later found out that she went to jail and that she was deeply angry with me and my husband, but we did not care. And yeah guys, I don't know what is up with these people that don't believe that others are disabled. I don't even get how you can have the audacity to even presume that. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.